The comedy legend Carol Burnett launched her own variety show in 1967 called The Carol Burnett Show. The show starred Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Lyle Wagner as her co-stars initially, and then later on Burnett recruited Tim Conway to take Wagner's place after he left the series in 1974. The show ran on CBS from September 11, 1967 to March 29, 1978, and that was a total of 279 episodes, and it won 25 Emmy Awards. By the time Carol Burnett started her show, she had been a popular veteran of television for 12 years, having made her first appearances in 1955 on The Paul Winchell Show and the sitcom Stanley, starring comedian Buddy Hackett. She then became a regular of the supporting cast of The Gary Moore Show. She departed from that series in the spring of '62 to pursue some other projects in film and some Broadway productions, and also to headline some television specials of her own. She ended up signing a contract with CBS for 10 years, which required her to do 2 guest appearances and a special each year with the network. Within the first 5 years of this contract, she had the option to do what's called push the button. That was a phrase that program executives used to be put on the air for 30 one-hour shows. In the last week of the 5th year of her contract, she ended up calling the head of CBS to exercise this clause in her contract, and CBS obliged her and gave Burnett her own variety show. Now, years after the show ended, it was revealed that each week's show was taped twice in front of a different audience, and the best parts from each taping were edited together. Now, one of the strangest situations is how Vicki Lawrence got on the show. She ended up writing a fan letter to Carol Burnett while she was still in high school. Carol received the letter on the day that Vicki was going to be in the Miss Fireball contest, and Carol Burnett just had a feeling about her. For some reason, she was intrigued with this young girl's letter. Carol went to the trouble to find her dad's phone number and to call Vicki, and she then attended that contest later on that day. She went to the contest and they talked for about 5 minutes afterwards, and they decided to keep in touch to discuss Vicki's career. Vicki ended up auditioning and got the part of Carol's kid sister and became a regular on the series. Most people know about the trademark image of Carol tugging on her ear, and that was a message to her grandmother saying hi. You see, Carol Burnett's grandmother died during the run of the series, but she continued to tug her ear in every episode as a tribute to her. Now, I find it interesting that the print dress that Carol Burnett always wore as Eunice in the family sketches was an actual vintage garment from the 1930s. The sketch was originally to have a Tennessee Williams type style to it, and costume designer Bob Mackey found it in a thrift shop. It was originally a long, sleeveless evening dress, which Mackey shortened, creating the capelet top detail by using the surplus fabric. The well-worn costume acquired many small tears over the years and years of use, and was patched from the inside with many bits of chiffon. At one point, Mackey copied the dress exactly, using a similar fabric, but Burnett preferred to keep wearing the original out of a very superstitious feeling, even though it was extremely fragile. Now, the show has so many breakups or just breakdowns of the actors where they can't keep it together and are laughing through the skits. And that's one thing that makes this series so funny. But there's 3 that are considered really classics of the show. One of them being the dentist sketch, where Harvey Korman could not keep a straight face with Tim Conway. Secondly would be the family sketch in the game Sorry, when Vicki Lawrence completely went off script, causing Carol Burnett to lose it in both tapings. The most famous one is the family sketch called The Elephant Story, when Tim Conway dragged on a story about two elephants, causing the cast to just break up. When he finally finished, Vicki Lawrence would steal the scene by saying, "Are you sure that little a-hole is through?" causing Tim Conway and the rest of the cast to fall to pieces. Vicki Lawrence was considered the baby of the family. She was 21 years younger than Harvey Korman, 16 years younger than Carol Burnett and Tim Conway, and 14 years younger than Lyle Wagner. In the very beginning, Vicki would almost always do just the Carol and Sis sketches and a few musical numbers, and this was because of her inexperience. When she felt like she was ready, she finally asked Carol if she could do other things, that she wanted to branch out into other sketches. Vicki was only 18 when she started the series. The most critically acclaimed sketch from the show was Went with the Wind, the Gone with the Wind parody. The parody has been listed in the funniest shows of all time over the years. And one of the defining moments of the sketch is when Carol, playing Scarlett O'Hara, descends the stairs at Tara wearing the green velvet drapes with the curtain rods still in them and admits, "I saw it in the window and I couldn't resist." The original script called for Burnett to have the curtains tossed haphazardly over her shoulders. But Mackey decided that it would be funnier to create an actual dress and leave the hanger intact across her shoulders. He was slightly bitter after all the years later and all of his magnificent creations that the joke dress has become his signature piece. And the curtain rod dress actually hangs in the Smithsonian. During its 11 seasons, nearly every who's who of the entertainment industry had a guest appearance on this show, from Ronald Reagan to Steve Martin to Julie Andrews and Robin Williams, and they all had an exceptionally incredible time on the set. The only guest that Burnett profoundly aspired to have but never managed to land was Bette Davis. She just demanded too much money for the show's budget. Carol made all her guests sign her red autograph book at the end of every show on camera. One can speculate the value of this guest book, which one day will probably end up on the auction block. Now, Carol Burnett talked one time about during one episode, before Tim Conway was a regular on the show, and he was actually a guest there with Petula Clark. And Carol said that Tim Conway and Petula were two of the nicest people in show business. And I guess something went wrong with Harvey that night. She said that at times he could be really in a bad mood. And this particular night was one of those nights, and he was just scowling at everybody. At one point, he was really rude to Tim and Petula. When Carol Burnett visited Korman in his dressing room to find out what was wrong with him, he told her to mind her own business. When the comedy icon reminded Korman that what upset her guest on the show fell under the umbrella of her business, Korman then dug in his heels and started to argue with her. He told her that she couldn't dictate how he should feel or act, and that he'd just as soon go home and never come back after tonight's show. And he was really getting in her face and walking her backwards into the hall, and then he closed his door on her. And Carol was just completely stunned by this action. She said that her makeup was just not to be confrontational, but she felt like this was one time where she needed to step up and get right back at him. She then called Korman's agent and told him that the co-star would be done with the series after that evening's performance. When the show was over that night, she went back by his dressing room to tell him the news that he was fired. She walked in and said, "Well, you got your wish. I called your agent, and he's aware of the situation and the fact that you were rude to our guests tonight, and because of your behavior, I was screwing up all over the place tonight during the show, and I can't work like that. So if you want off the show, you're off. You're free to go." Carol turned around to leave, and Korman stopped her and asked what he could do to make amends. She then told him that the very next Monday, "I want to see you walk in cheerful. I don't care what's going on in your life. There's no reason for you to ever be nasty to one of our guests or our crew." Korman agreed to this, and the two shook hands on the deal. Now, Carol wasn't really sure if he was going to go through with this and change his ways. But that following Monday, he did stick to the agreement, showing that he was completely on board with changing his attitude. What a great show this is. Take a look back at it in syndication. You'll love it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.